Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight we're in Kemet to speak with Setna Comwest. Greetings, Setna. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing up there in the cold?
I'm doing fantastic in the cold. You're
It
missing.
was 80 degrees here today. I don't want to rub it in, but I'm rubbing it in.
I'm very happy for you that you're enjoying the warm weather.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, what a day.
I hear a lot is going on in Savannah and that you're in the middle of it. So let's
Oh my goodness, yes. There's a lot going on. Some of it is good, some of it is not so good.
we'll start with the good.
Well, I celebrated my Imbalag, or I call it the Festival of Lights in the winter. Um, Monday we did that, and it was beautiful, very, very beautiful. We did a healing for a member who was hit by a car on his bicycle.
Sorry to hear that.
Yes, and he's recovering nicely, and he has a wonderful lawyer, so he'll be doing very well, both healing wise and I think financially shortly.
I,
The person left the scene of the accident.
oh,
Yeah, not a good thing for her. So what we've begun now, as of February 1st, was the beginning of the um, voyages and the labors, as you would say, of Isis. Set had destroyed Osiris in October, and now Isis has finished her mourning period, and now she's searching for the pieces of her husband so that she can then put them together again and conceive Horus, which will be the return of the sun, which is what everyone is doing in the pagan world when they do in Balag, the beginning, the welcoming of the eminent spring.
yes, we have similar ceremonies in Greece and throughout the Mediterranean. And will these be reenactments of the myths, or will they involve interactive storytelling? How will you follow the labors of Isis?
I will say that we will do a little of each. Right now, we've been starting where Isis has opened the box, found the body of Osiris, and that was in Yule, and then sent Set found that she did that, she turned her back to do some magic. He cut him, Osiris, into many, many pieces and threw them all over the world. And so then Isis begins her period of mourning because she doesn't know what to do at first. And then by February 1st, she knows she has to go find the pieces and magically repair him so he becomes whole again. And so now everywhere she finds a piece, she plants a temple. She makes a temple. And so that's what we're doing. We're working with my membership. And the Pernateru has a council that is not only of the Egyptian traditions. As I was explaining to you last night, I have a person who works with the Hindu traditions.
Mhm.
There is someone else who is a Viking. I've got someone else who's working as a necromancer who works with those who have passed on. Those are up there in New Jersey, by the way. I have two gentlemen that will be working with necromancy up in New Jersey. They should contact you, I should imagine. And I have people down here that are also working with the voodoo people and the Celts. So we've got a wonderful, I'm going to call it a round table of different traditions all working together here in Savannah, Georgia. It's very exciting.
Really awesome.
I've never experienced anything like this. Such a joining together of magical peoples that is a cooperative, a collaborative effort, and everyone has something to say. When we did the ritual, each person, and there were five, each person was talking about their particular group. They
Mhm.
had an affirmation and a prayer. Since we had this member that got hurt, an affirmation and a prayer. We worked with various crystals and also with our altar. On the altar, you have water, earth, air, and fire, of course, the four elements. This is the year of the snake. And if you saw it, well, you didn't see, I posted something on Facebook and Instagram and um, Mastodon, which is a strange thing,
It's
where I said, yeah, it's a very strange, strange group. Um, I posted a winged cobra. This is the year of the snake in the Chinese. And so I've said, well, this is the year of the Egyptian snake for me. And of course, I always wear
Of course.
a beautiful cobra. I'm trying to do that without getting seasick. I'm not good at this. Anyway, I'm wearing a cobra ring, and I have on my doorstop as a cobra. In Egypt, we have Runanet, Metzger, Butu, and the Uraeus cobras. They are gods and goddesses that protect Egypt, and they are cobras. Let's face it, if you're going to get near a cobra, you're going to get bitten. They're going to say hello and attack you. So we separate when we do the rituals. We have four cobras, which we work with, the ones I mentioned. Again, Butu, Uraeus, which is the cobra that Egyptians wear on their head, Metzger, and Renanet. And they are all the surrounding cobras of Egypt.
Do they
Um, Go
like
ahead.
all the elements or?
They are, yes. Uraeus is a fire cobra. She comes from the area around the sun. And you have Butu, who is the water cobra. She comes from the area around the Nile and therefore is water. You have Renanet, who is in the air. It is a cobra of the air. And then you have Metzger, who is the cobra of the earth. So those happen. But I also have Isis, Nephthys, Neith, and Selket. Selket is the watery fire goddess, which is interesting. And she comes from the south. Isis, because she's dealing with Osiris, who is the lord of the underworld, the lord of the netherworld, is the west goddess. The west is where the Egyptians say is the land of the dead. The east is sunrise and knowledge. And so that is Nephthys, who faces her sister Isis. And in the north, you have the winds and the goddess of time and space, which is who I just wrote about for Tim Schwartz, is Neith. And she weaves the fabric of time, and she also creates the winds in the north in a far off northern cave on top of a high mountain, which might have been Olympus. And so all those things are there, and we bring those energies. And then we have the cross quarters, and those are done by the four sons of Horus, who are Imset, I'm sorry, Kebsenuf, Duamutef, and Hapi. And those are all interesting four brothers, like the mighty sons of Hercules. These are the sons of Horus. Well, I have to relate you in there, don't I?
Well, thank
So,
you.
yes. And so I always look at Horus as Hercules.
Yes,
Horus.
the term hero comes from Heru, which is the Egyptian name for Hercules.
So Heracles. It's interesting.
Kleos means the force or the glory. So,
Well, like Cleopatra means glory of her fathers.
mhm.
Cleopatria. And, that's not her real name. I don't know why I brought her up. She always shows up somehow.
She made an appearance in your endeavor. Like I know in what I'm doing, Medea and Circe and other personifications have started making their way and popping up. Or
Well, yes, Cleopatra always shows up because she's a guide spirit of mine. I always laugh when I hear these people that, I've had 9 of them this year, and it's just a brand new year that are Cleopatra. And I mean, I've met as many Henry VIIIs, as many Christopher Columbuses, Napoleons, William Shakespeare's. Everybody is always somebody famous. One of my past lives, as you know, was a barber. And, he was a very little consequence, but that's what he did. Setna West, who is my most prominent past life, was a priest of Amun. He was in the temple at Luxor, which is Thebes in Egypt. And he was one of the sons of Ramesses II, but he was a lesser son. He was of little consequence in history. I mean, there is a stela in the Brooklyn Museum which belongs to him, which imparts his story. The only bad part is you have to read 18th dynasty, 19th dynasty hieroglyph to know what's going on. Fortunately, I do.
fortunately, you do. Yes, I was going to say
Yes, I read hieroglyph. Anyone who tells you they read
that is
all
a
of them.
powerful thing when you encounter objects or depictions of times long past and you remember them.
Well, there's another past life of mine who Explains to me why I have such a disdain for the pharaoh Akhenaten. He was a grand vizier. His name was Ai, or I, and he was a rather nasty character. I guess that's why I'm still here. Karma to build up with. He's the one that, with the general Horemheb and Ramses, um, got rid of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. You know, they weren't such lovely. She might have been a beautiful woman on the outside, but she's really kind of ugly on the inside. So maybe that's why they buried the bust, and they can't find her. Um, and they haven't found much of Akhenaten. They found his sarcophagus. I don't know that it's open. That was filled. I don't know if you've heard anything about that. I read various and assorted Egyptologist magazines. I don't know if they found the body of Akhenaten. They found his sarcophagus,
I remember reading about that. You might have posted it actually, and that
probably.
I'm aware of it, but no, I haven't followed up on it.
I got a lot of negative feedback from that, having disdain for that particular pharaoh. My favorite pharaohs are Tutmosis III, who was actually Akhenaten's father. Um, I mean, no, I'm a great great uncle, and Amenhotep III was his father. Hatshepsut, who was a wonderful female pharaoh. Obviously, Ramesses II, who I think is a superstar, and Cleopatra. And Alexander the Great was actually made in Thebes, was made pharaoh. And people don't know that. He was the precursor to the Ptolemaic
Yes,
dynasty. Alexander was pharaoh first, and then Ptolemy.
yes. There was a book written by, in Greek it's Eusebius, but I think in English they pronounce it Eusebius or Eusebius. And he wrote of Alexander during the reign of Alexander, and he got a bird's eye view of somebody who was a historical figure and real becoming a god. So he wrote about that, and it makes for an interesting read.
There are two pharaohs, two people that I should say, that in their living time, in their lifetime, decided they were a god. And that would be Alexander the Great and Caligula. Caligula decided he was Jove and Jupiter, and sometimes he was Mercury, which was, Hermes, but Mercury is the Roman
Right.
version. And of course, his sister, who he was going to have a child with, but he murdered,
Was
was all the goddesses. And
it
so he,
wasn't it wasn't unusual back then. Caesar was descended from Venus. Mark Antony, in his younger days, was thought to be an incarnation of Hercules, and in his older days, he was considered to be an avatar of Dionysus. So that wasn't
oh,
that.
I could believe that. Mark Antony did nothing but have orgies all the
Mm,
time he was with before Cleopatra, during, and who knows what happened afterwards because he didn't make it too far.
right.
He was 46 when he died. He fell on his sword.
Yeah, he was relatively young.
Yeah, I mean Caesar was 54 when he was murdered. And that's coming up, By the way, everybody, and I always remind you, the Ides of March is the day Caesar became, I'll put it nicely, Swiss cheese. And it is going to be the first day of the Mercury retrograde. So here we have the day Caesar was stabbed, killed, and we have Mercury retrograde. So it's a very unlucky time this time. And it's an interesting thing because this hasn't occurred like this with the alignment as well since 44 BC, with this particular alignment and the Ides of March and a Mercury retrograde besides. So it's going to be interesting watching what happens that day.
It should be interesting. My wife calls the time we're going through now the long retrograde because it seems that way.
Oh, I will say I think I understand. Yes, it's going to be very interesting times. So my the Perniteru and my council are meeting weekly. The council meets weekly to decide what we're going to be doing. The Perniteru membership is growing too, both on cyber. I have my Perniteru on Instagram and Perniteru on Facebook, and people can contact us and find out what's going
That's
on and have our we have I will be posting my calendar for what rituals, ceremonies, what classes we have, and who we will be bringing in or not bringing in. I had a girl who um, had a very interesting thing. She was a goth, and she asked me if the Egyptians were vampires, and I said no, I don't think so. So
There
she
was a book written back in the 70s. I have it somewhere in a box or on a shelf. But they presented the thesis that a lot of the mythical gods, including Hercules, by the way, were actually vampires, and they scoured the lore and found certain stories, and they pieced it together by connecting the dots in a vampire fashion. So Osiris was a vampire, remember, Hercules was a vampire, and many other gods were vampires as well.
Well, I know that was that terrible movie, um, which I'm sure Brian loves, called, The Queen of the Damned, which was an Anne Rice
Yes.
film. And I'm very sure that that was interesting because she was supposed to be an Egyptian queen, goddess, who was a vampire. But nowhere in the hieroglyphs does it talk about any of the gods and goddesses sucking blood.
In the King Kull movie, Kull, they opened
Yeah,
Akivasha, who was kind of like a Stygian, which is the equivalent of Egyptian vampire in the world of Robert E. Howard.
that, and I thought she was really more of a demon. She when you see her in the end and she's in the fire, she looks more like a demon than a vampire.
In the book that they got that story from, which was written by Robert E. Howard, she's definitely a vampire. She's referred to as a vampire. They took a lot of liberties in the film, but in the
They
original
made Yes, they
story,
made her the Red Witch.
yeah,
Akiyabasha was the Red Witch who that idiot sorcerer brought back to life, and then she killed him.
yeah.
Lovely woman. Oh dear. So that, those are things I can tell people. We've been working on, I have an expert on wands. I have an expert who will teach people how not only to read and write hieroglyph, but speak the language. And he's a brilliant person, and he's in the I call him the outer temple in the cyber temple. He's available that way. You can ask him how to say I love you, how to say, where's room 64?
Mhm.
Um, where's the science lab? All kinds of things. I'm just being silly. But, prayers, names, what have you, in ancient Egyptian.
That is fantastic.
I read and write the language. I once said, as many different forms of Egyptian hieroglyph as there were dynasties, and there were 32 dynasties. The Ptolemies bastardized things. They even put words in there. L in some of the traditions is a palm leaf bent over. When the Ptolemies got there, they didn't know how to make an L, so they used a lion laying on its side. And so that became an L. You'll find that in that Egyptian queen that I keep talking about, in her name, in the cartouche. When I first saw that cartouche, and by the way, that's what's in the Rosetta Stone, is the Ptolemaic hieroglyphic alphabet.
Mhm.
So it doesn't fit with everything else. I mean, if you look at something fourth dynasty, and then you go to try to translate something in, let's say, 18th dynasty, you won't be able to.
Right, because it's not Egyptian, it's Greco-Egyptian. The
Well, no, the 14th the fourth dynasty is the Pyramid dynasty.
Oh, okay.
The 18th dynasty is King Tut, Akhenaten, Nefertiti, all those people, and they by then the language had changed, been different influences. Hittite, Mitanni, some of the people from Meroe, which is Lower Egypt, actually. And so you got all these different things going on. See, the language was different. Even the gods and goddesses were different. You have little Bess. He's a Hercules is connected, you say, to Bess. Bess
Yeah.
is a funny little
The-
dwarf who
There,
has feathers on his head. He's got a rather large thing, and he's one of the gods who aids in childbirth.
Mhm.
A woman sat on a stool and gave birth, which must have been incredibly painful. And he would be teasing and making fun, making her laugh to forget the pain. And then, the Turek, the hippopotamus goddess, was, I think they did that because she looked like she was a pregnant creature. And she would be the one encouraging Phil, come on, push, 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 and he's dancing around to get her pain. So those two worked together. I don't know if they were a couple, but it would have been interesting. A giant hippopotamus standing on two legs and a little tiny feather dwarf who was kind of like Hervé Villachez. Up lane, up lane.
Yeah, did you see the movie Forbidden Zone?
Sorry?
Did you ever see the movie Forbidden Zone?
I think so, yes.
He played the King Fausto of the fifth dimension or the
Oh,
sixth,
that's right. Yes, that's so
which
long
was a
ago.
zombie army. And
That's so long ago. You had to I had to jog the old little gray cells for a minute there. So that's what's going on with me. I'm also all my mediumship work has been taking off like mad. That's what I've been doing, three and four at a day, and it wears me out to have all these spirits, those that have passed down in my room, giving me all kinds of advice and things. I had one this afternoon. He's a grumpy old man, and the family wants the grandmother to move here to California, and she's being miserable, and he's trying to get her to do that. He didn't in life, they didn't get along well.
Mm.
So that's happening. I had another one where um man was trying to find where his wife hid some money. And I found, and it's funny because I got a response. I said to him, go into their old car, which he had in the alley. And in the glove compartment was an envelope. The envelope contained a key, and he never knew what the hell it was for. It's for what do you call it? One of those boxes that's in the bank, a strong box, a security box. And he got the numbers. He went down to the bank, and sure enough, that's where a lot of the money was, and old jewelry and some stocks and bonds.
I had when I was doing mediumship work way back in the day, I had a similar instance where they didn't approach me looking for anything, but I kept seeing this old woman, and she was showing me this sofa, and she was showing me that there were things hidden in like the sofa cushion, and this came back like many times. So I was shown pictures, and I identified the old woman. And it turned out that nobody knew where she put important documents and money and jewelry and stuff. So she showed me, and they did find the things in the pillow cushion of the sofa.
The very first time, that's amazing. It really does, and it's what happens. The
Yes.
very first time that I did something like that was remote viewing. There is
Mhm.
a man, you might even know him. He's the guy that wrote those little tiny scrolls you used to get in the 80s and the 70s for astrology when you were checking out in the supermarket. Well,
I knew of him, but I didn't know him personally.
his name is Joe Liccardo, and he
Mhm.
does live in New Jersey. Don't ask me where. It's been since 1986, and I don't remember. Sometimes I don't remember what happened for breakfast.
I'm there
And-
too, my friend.
oh my God, getting old stinks sometimes. But anyway, long, dull story short, Joe Liccardo was talking to me through a friend of mine who's a high priest of a rather large order, and they were testing me. So he said, Michael, my cat Smokey left, took off a couple of days ago, and I can't find him anywhere. So I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I said, I got the numbers 2675, and I think the name of the street was Willow or something like that, and Willow and like Clive or something, Clifford, in whatever town they were in. And I said, he goes, well, that's 2 blocks, 3 blocks away from me. And I said, you're going to find the cat sitting under a kind of like a pea green, like a faded pea green Volkswagen Bug up on cinder blocks. They were fixing it, and there was an oil stain below it. And apparently the cat was laying out under the Volkswagen Bug because it was very hot. It was summer. He goes, oh, Michael, that's crazy. I said, go out there and look. And sure enough, that's exactly where the cat was. They'd been feeding him, so of course he wouldn't leave. You know how cats are.
Yes, I know what cats are.
So Joe came over and he said, "That's my cat." And the woman said, "I thought because he was very well taken care of that, it must be somebody in the neighborhood." Did they look? No. They figured the cat would go home, but he didn't. He stayed there for a while. But Smokey went home with Joe, and I got a call, and he wanted to pay me. And I said, "No, no, no, this is the first time I'm doing this." It was the first time I had that impression. But sure enough, it was a very interesting experience, and it expanded my psychic abilities. But before that, I was just doing tarot and talking to ghosts. And then I was able to do these other things. You grow up, as the more you learn, the more you can add to your energy psychically.
Very, very true. And those ways of perceiving the world are very different than the way we've been conditioned to interact with the social reality. And it's very, very interesting. My path took a different turn, but I was glad that I walked those roads and experienced what I experienced and learned what I learned.
Well, I took more myself a more religious bent because
Mhm.
I'm very devoted to the gods and goddesses of the Neteru of Egypt. They are my daily prayer. I could show you around the room and show you, but I think you're only going to get my backdrop. Um, but I have two or three altars here in this, just in my room. Some of them are made of crystal, some are, statuary, some are just hieroglyphs that I'm working with. When someone asks me to do a prayer or send healing and things, I will use my cobalts, as you know, but I also use hieroglyphic with the person's name, their zodiac sign, and where they are, and I'll focus on the energy that way. And I'm teaching my students to do the same so that they have a focusing stone, something that they're going to work with. And a position, like a dot on the wall. There are Hindu people that will stare at a dot on a wall to get into energies of a divinatory, or, find the future or see what someone's doing.
Yeah, there are a lot of different techniques in each pantheon, I guess, or each culture has a different view of reality. And the secret seems to be, as you're showing, immersion and involvement. So the more things you have, like hieroglyphics and crystals and a mythology and art, the more doorways into the realm of the gods you make available.
Now, on that note, and I hope they show up, it's hard. I've got in my hand a black tourmaline,
Uh-huh. I
which
see.
is a huge black tourmaline column. And then I have a white crystal column, and they're on both sides of my altar. The crystal brings in knowledge, brings in clarity and information. The black tourmaline sends out negativity and brings you a very clear space. And so I
Mhm.
work that way. I also have a green crystal I work for prosperity. This helps people that are in need. Fulfill that part of their life. I also work with my cobalts. This is a very light cobalt, light blue, and this
Mhm.
is for healing. I'm glad to show people those things. I also will work with equilibrium. My altar is positive, negative, all points, and that is I don't know how I'm doing this. This is a eight-pointed fluorite, which is an octahedron, which is very much in the Hermetic traditions. You have as above, so below.
Oh, yes, as we
And
just
that's
about.
and my altar space, I always say, is in that energy in between those two right side up, upside down pyramids. And I teach my people to work psychically using colors, using words and meditation to make that happen. So they'll create that double pyramid space. And then around that, I always ask them to use a crystal, to think of a bubble. So I will demonstrate using a crystal ball. This is a rather heavy old one that I've had for many, many, many years. And it's that's quartz crystal. What's nice about that one is it's from 1976. It's numbered and signed.
Very cool.
So those are some of the things I'm doing to show you what's going on.
I'm
I am also
impressed.
working on
Very good.
I'm also working on my grimoire. I'm about to send one of them to a friend of ours, Olaf, and probably also to Tim to have them look at it, and I'll send it to you too. It's a book of the rituals that I've been doing over the years, and a way to set up um, an order, a coven, a lodge, a temple, a way
Mhm.
to set it up so you have the I don't know what you want to call it, like the way you'd set up a corporation, the way you would set up the officers, the membership of your particular temple or lodge. And it's very documented, very detailed and documented, and should help people whoever are looking for something a little more structured. And that's what we're doing. Egyptian temples, as you know, were extremely structured.
Yes.
You had before you even entered the door, you were invited in or not. You became a student, and then you became an outer temple member, and then you'd work for several years or so till you got certain things done, and then you would move ahead to the middle temple, and then you'd go into the inner one, which was the high priests and high priestesses, which was very
Mhm.
secret. But those are the people that came out during a ritual, during a ceremony, and would perform the ritual in front of in the open part of the altar and temple where everyone could see. The doors of the temple would be open, the public would be outside staring in, and the membership was just out looking at what the high priest and high priestesses were doing. And that's how I work. I have an outer circle and a middle circle and an inner circle. And the inner circle is the inner sanctum, the hyperstyle, the sacred place, the holy of holies. And I think everybody works in that way. We use god heads and goddess heads um, to embody the god or the goddess that they are dedicated to. Everyone in my group will take a name of a deity, their secret name, as you mentioned earlier, but that's a deity name. That is what they will be the priest of, the priestess of, so that they will say, I'm Selkid, I'm Bast, I'm Thoth, I am Horus, what have you. And that's what the function will be during the ritual, to be that particular deity to perform for us. And I will, being the high priest, I take on Ra, I take on Horus, I take on Osiris. And if I'm in a bad mood, I take on Set. What are you going to say? You look stumped.
Sounds wonderful, all the things that you're doing, and I'm glad that they're coming together.
So how someone's going to say, how does this relate to Hercules and his particular group? Well, Hercules, of course, the what would you call him? The highest of high, the All Father is Zeus, Deus. In Egypt, his name is Khonsu. He is not even a he's just Kansu. It's an energy form. It's the unmoved mover, the all high, I always say, without using a name. And there are some statues in later dynasties, but in the beginning it's just light. And that's how they would worship him. It's just light that's everywhere.
That sounds like a great correspondence. Others equate Zeus with Amun-Ra, and there's a story about the Titanomachy where they fought against the gods, the Titans, and later on, one of the primordials, Typhon, after the giants failed to storm the new Olympians and create a new order, Typhon went among them, and the gods said to flee Olympus, and it said that they wore animal masks in Egypt, and they drew the equivalences that way. But the gods can be many things and take many guises. Sometimes they're on a continuum, and there are ancient books that stated and demonstrated very clearly. So,
In my tarot group, there's Typhon.
oh, very cool.
In the group, in the tarot, in the Egyptian tarot I use, I have many of the gods and goddesses. And then I just came out with this, I found this new one, which is called the Gods of Egypt.
Yes.
And I'm using this in conjunction with my Rosetta, which is a round circular spread, which I invented When I got to Savannah, I have this beautiful mirrored round table, which has an amazing scrying mirror on top of it. And so I used my tarot spread in a circular motion, which is not different than anything I've ever done before. All my other tarot spreads were always squares or, you know, like temple design, looking like temples. This is a different thing, and it's much more accurate. I have great success with that, and I use that with the gods and goddesses and with my mediumship. So it's kind of you're getting when I'm doing a session, I don't want to call it a reading, but when I'm doing a session, you have several different kinds of media that I'm going to be working with when I work with you.
I don't use the tarot very often, and when I do, I use my own interpretations rather than the ones in the book.
Much.
This is a tarot that it's no longer in print, but it's the Olympus tarot.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, it
I
is,
al-
and I developed my own spread with it that works really well. So if I really uh, can't get my information from those sources, most of my oracular stuff is done through dreams and synchronicities. Uh,
well, I like this Egyptian god deck. For instance, this is the goddess Sekhmet.
mhm.
Um, they're all different beings. I do exactly what you do. I don't care what's on the card, what they think, what it's supposed to be interpreted as. I know of a tarot reader, and I'm not going to be bad, but I was laughing when my customer told me she reads what the cards are going to mean out of a book.
Some people do that. I've heard the same.
And I found that that's not reading yourself. You're just reading the customer, the person wanting to have the reading can do that. I don't think that's very creative or very using the psychic ability at all. You've shuffled the cards and you're reading out of somebody else's book. And it's just me. I mean, it's my feeling, but it's that, you know, you're reading that. And how do you know how that relates to the other cards?
Right. I rely on the stories because I know the mythology. So where do these figures appear together? What are their interactions like? Are there variants of the story that could shed light on this? So I use the mythology itself to interpret the cards. And it's very startling sometimes the cards you'll get and the stories that they'll relate to and the information you can glean from that.
I've been tested on my psychic abilities.
Hmm.
Someone gave me well, at the Casey Center, a deck of index cards, blank index cards, and I had someone shuffle them. And this is done by psychometry, it's knowledge by touch. And they, you know, by shuffling the cards, they're putting their energy. So I read blank index cards and told them exactly what I saw. And it was accurate between
That is awesome.
97, yeah, 97 to 98% accurate. There's always going to be two or two little flies in the ointment. But that's vibration. If a person's thinking of one thing and then changes their mind psychically, that's what you're going to read.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've got a lot going on. You know, I'm very happy that things are happening the way they are. The only bad thing that happened to me, you know, when we had a situation with the hurricanes and things, I had some problems with some of the furniture. So I've been having trouble getting a decent bed. And so I had a blow up bed for which I had in New Jersey, and it finally blew up because blow up beds blow up. Well, yesterday my new one came, the replacement, and I sat on it. Just, you know, I hadn't blown it up for more than maybe 10 minutes, and it started to deflate. So now I'm sleeping on a rather large couch. I I heard about being homeless, but being bedless is even worse. I just it's crazy. And then my cat, Oliver, loves to bounce all over me while I'm sleeping. And he's on the couch, so he figures he's perfectly justified.
Yeah, my Chihuahua, I'm surprised my Chihuahua hasn't jumped on my lap during this show because she usually does. And then her little head peeks up and looks around a little bit.
Oliver always about well twice, 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm dead asleep and probably astral projecting out, and then at 6:30 because he wants me to feed him, he gets up and smacks me in the nose, and it's quite a target, I know, but you know, boom, 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 and I'm like, okay, all right, already, it's vitamin and coffee time, and that's what happens. and I feed him. I could
Mine
be dying. He gets
scratches-
fed first.
Yeah, that's how the pets are. Yeah, mine comes and scratches my shoulder with
Oh.
her paw and her claws.
Well, your shoulders are big targets, and so is my nose. So, that's how things go. Plus, I'm all curled. I'm like a mummy. Well, that makes sense, right? I'm all wrapped up in my comforter or my blanket, and I'm out cold. And very little shows of me. So he hits me in the nose because that's what he can see. So on to other things. Now, we've got the spring equinox coming in, well, depends on which groundhog you listen to. I don't
Right.
believe in talking to rodents, but
My wife gave a talk on the Groundhog Day groundhogs and how accurate they actually are. It doesn't seem like they're actually very accurate.
well, apparently up there, the Iroquois didn't know what the heck that was doing with that. They'd never heard of such a thing. I've known Hurons and Iroquois and whatever. Um, and the Cherokee thought that the groundhogs were delicious. So that didn't work very well. I don't know. And then there's these people that were out in, I don't know, I think it was Ohio somewhere, where they had an opossum reading, getting the future or getting
No, I
the
hadn't heard.
next. I thought it was very wild. I mean, you've got rodents and a marsupial, and they're going to know what's going on.
Well, there are stories. Aesop told quite a few of them, and
I know, I love him. How the leopard got its spots, how the rhinoceros got its wrinkles. There's the story about the mouse and the crocodile,
we
or
have
the
that in our culture in American mythology, but people know them as cartoons. Those are stories of the animals and their cunning and their special abilities and as personifications. Lately, we've been looking a lot into American mythology and pop culture and making equivalents with that in the ancient times. So we're never left abandoned without knowledge. This knowledge pops up everywhere and in everything. You just need to know how to recognize it and read it.
when I was 4 or 5, my mother would sit on the edge of my bed, and she would read me from Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories.
Yes.
And that was cool. He was also the one that wrote the Jungle Book with Mowgli and many other wonderful stories, Gunga Din, and many others. So he was one of my mother's favorites. So I learned a lot from Rudyard Kipling.
Yes, I did too. Long ago days when I experienced those tales, and later on when I read them as an adult. And uh,
Well, I found a first printing of the Arabian Nights, and I found that in a bookstore. It was like 10 for $1 or something. And I was very lucky. It's a beautifully illustrated version. I also have Hans Christian Andersen, which also is very dear to me.
so, how you are someone who's incarnated into many cultures, and you're very well read, and you're very well studied, and you're rich in practical experience and lore. Out of all the different mythical traditions that have existed since the dawn of time and that are still being perpetuated now again through popular culture and media, what was it about the Egyptian culture that created such a strong resonance that drew you, uh, so that a great part of your current incarnation is certainly influenced and colored by the Egyptian culture?
Well, I always tell everybody this silly little short story. My father was driving me to Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and we got on the Long Island Expressway. I don't know why they call it that. It's anything but an expressway. Um, and I looked over to my right, and there was a big theater poster, and it was Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra. And my mother was beautiful, but she was no Elizabeth Taylor. I don't think anybody's was. And I looked up at this 40-foot goddess, and I wanted to know who she was. And my father said, "Oh, that's Cleopatra." But the name resonated with me. I don't know what that was, but the name resonated. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tape isn't rolling. And I wanted to know more about her. My uncle drew me a picture of the thing, and I got that, and I started to learn to draw by copying it. But I wanted to know more about the culture that this lady was from. I don't know who she was, but I knew something about the name. It was familiar to me. I might have lived in that time. No, I was not Cleopatra. But
Oh,
I don't, it's just silly. There was someone when I was a child thought I was. I said, I don't think so with this nose. Then I found out she had a big nose, the real one. And I started reading about in a library, at East Meadow Library on ancient Egypt. And then my uncle took me first to the Brooklyn Museum, and I got to sit on a Hatshepsut Sphinx. I thought that was so cool. I got yelled at, but I was 4 or 5. And then we went to the Metropolitan Museum, and I was home. I I was in love with everything. The more I learned about the culture, the more I knew that was my culture, where I
mhm.
belonged. And when I came to the pagan world, and I'm a hereditary witch, and my coven, my ancestrals were all Celtic and Druidic. They also followed Hecate. I think everyone does, but it didn't resonate with me. I was happy to do the rituals and things, but something was missing, and what was missing was Kemet, was Egypt. And the moment I got in more involved, Isis came energy wise, wrapped herself around me and said, "You are of our people." And I knew I was. This is home. When I started to write, when I was 5, hieroglyph, if you ever saw my handwriting, you'd know why. But hieroglyph made much more sense to me. ABC didn't do it. Looking at that hieroglyphic alphabet was easy. And when I started to learn it, it was more like what Aristotle said and Plato said, you don't really learn, you remember.
Right,
And that's what I felt. I was remembering something, and I didn't know about Comwest yet, but I was remembering that that was my world. And somewhere along the line, I got the Aisha Shawala Delubish books, Herbach 1 and 2, and
yes, I remember those.
the more I read them, I knew that was me. And Anne Heche, I think was her name, wrote a very beautiful book called um, it was about reincarnation. And she remembered being an ancient Egyptian woman who
Yes, I
was,
remember that book, yes.
yeah, and she was mauled by a lion, and she remembered what happened. Um, and that also had stream of consciousness with me. I was seeing, oh my God, this is where I am. This is what I did. This is what happened. And I saw it. I remembered everything. When I went to Egypt, I'm sure you felt the same way going to Greece.
Mhm.
When I went to Egypt, I was home. When I walked in the temple at Karnak, I was crying. I remembered rituals there, and looking at it in ruins hurt, or the temple of Isis at Philae, it's almost together as much as it can possibly be. And it's so beautiful. And going to the pyramids, I thought, what happened? I remembered them being gleaming white and perfect. And then looking at it, triangular, pyramidal shaped, blocks, ruins, really, it was upsetting. And you don't get that energy if it wasn't something in your life.
Right. Yeah, my awakening to who I am was it was culturally built into me because I was born into a Greek family. But I was resonating with the Hercules movies that were playing on TV at the time that we celebrate Sword and Cinema, and the Mighty Hercules cartoon, and then the Hercules in the comic books and so forth. So I always had that there, and I resonated with it phenomenally powerfully. And throughout my life, I've had knowledge that I was born with, where I would talk about something and everybody would look at me like I'm crazy. And then we find that the information that I knew was something that was discovered or scholars started talking about it. I remember even I had a life in pre-dynastic Egypt, and when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of information on pre-dynastic Egypt. Then when the Scorpion King came out, there was a lot of information that was popularly available, and a lot of the things that I described as a child were actually from pre-dynastic Egypt. So I know how powerful the remembrance is, and I agree with you in that assessment that remembering, and it's very powerful.
What I want you to do please, if you can get to New York, I know it's a little pain in the neck from where you are. There is the Namra Palette. It is by the pharaoh Dzoser. He was the Scorpion King. That is the first perfect piece that they have. Um, Namra was a pharaoh that they didn't even know it existed, and it shows on one side wearing the white crown, and on the other side wearing the red crown. That he united the two upper and lower Egypt,
Kingdoms.
Kenti and Amenti. Yeah, and it's a shadow. They call it a palette because it was used to grind malachite eyeshadow and eyeliner. So it resonated with me. I recognized it right away. But there's also on that palette are four bullheads, the god Apis, which is supposed to be centuries later, and it shows that they think it's from Hathor, but to me it looks Minoan.
Yes, the Apis bulls, I've always felt had a Minoan
Yeah.
resonance.
I mean, and I think if you see that, Hercules, it's going to evoke different memories for you from pre-dynastic Egypt. I know you have that warrior spirit, so the Scorpion King would certainly have resonated with you. When
And
I saw the land of the pharaohs, which is about the pharaoh Dzoser, who was the one who created the first pyramid. Oh, there's the scorpion. Cool. Well, I'm a Virgo and I have Isis on my other finger. She's there.
oh,
I'm
very
trying to see
cool.
her. I those two rings, my Cobra and my Isis, never leave me. When I had my eye surgery, they were mad at me because they had to tape up my fingers. I wouldn't take my rings off. I've never taken them off. Even when I'm in the shower, they don't go anywhere. I clean. I mean, that's why they're so clean, I guess. So that's where I'm at, and I see where you're at. I will teach whoever needs that information. I do past life regressions. It's a hypnosis. It's not something that the person that's doing it, in my case, me, guiding the person through, they're going to find their own conclusions. And all I am is a door to help them learn that. However, I also do past life readings. I was taught that by another psychic. She's amazing. And that is just based on the energy I got when I was at the Casey Center for a little while, learning about, how to interact with my vibration into their vibration so that I could go into their consciousness and into their book of their life and tell them where they've been.
The Casey Foundation has a show on our channel once a month, and I'm very pleased by that. I was influenced a lot by Edgar Casey and learned a lot from him growing up. And again, our conversation is nearing its end. How can people contact you, and what is the range of your services so that they can explore the different facets of everything you?
Okay. Range of services will be brought through on Phone a Wizard, which is on Facebook. It's also on Instagram now. We'll tell you tarot, divination, past life regressions. Um, I'm a witch, so I create spell kits. I teach people about crystals and those things. I can give you a list of my services if you contact me. You can get me for the temple, Perniteru, on either Instagram. Look for Perniteru, Perntjeru temple. You can also get me both on, as I said, on Instagram and on Facebook. You can get me at Michael K. Waterman, always on Facebook, or also on Instagram. Um, you can call me 516-650-3691. I know that's a Long Island number, but I was a Long Islander, and there's too many contacts to change numbers, so I didn't. Or you can email me at mkwaterman@icloud.com. Or you can reach me through Hercules if you wish. I'm always available somewhere along the line. So if you need me or you're interested in what I'm doing, please give me a holler.
Thank you very much. As always, I enjoy speaking with you and look forward to it. I wish you continued success with all your endeavors. and we will catch up in subsequent conversations. Be well, my friend, and thank you.
You too. Blessed be and Anku Jat Sanev, everyone, which is life, health, and prosperity.
In Greek, Yachara. Take care. Thank you.
You're welcome.